the reading we had today, some people see it as a little harsh. Shinran was very honest, and he really spoke truth. And the only quibble I have is the word evil. We use that word in our service book, but the word evil is like a real trigger word in Christian America. And one scholar, Dr. Mark Blum, said that evil is not quite the right word. What we do is kind of worse than evil. So evil is when you kind of know what you're doing is wrong and you do it anyway, and it doesn't bother you. But in the Buddhist tradition, evil is being oblivious, being unaware of what you do, kind of being self-righteous. It's that kind of problem. It's being deluded, being ignorant of what we're doing, insulting people, acting in ways that aren't wholesome and helpful, but without realizing it. And so that's where self-awareness and mindfulness come in, to try to be a little bit more thoughtful and mindful of our speech and how we behave. So I wore my math tie today. I'm bounding again. I know that math in Buddhism is kind of a lot to take early on a Sunday morning. But I kind of wanted to talk about common logical fallacies. And they're common because they're easy to do, and they happen all the time. They happen all the time. And they're very hard to not do and to spot. It's just part of the way our brain works, and we're just not aware. And another thing that goes with this is a lot of times we mistake our opinions for fact. So that's a dangerous thing as well. It's very effortless, and it happens very quickly, but what we think and feel become truth to us, and that causes a lot of problems. So I found this picture of Shinran Shonin on my hard drive. It's by Reverend Nori Watanabe, the minister at Oxnard, who passed away recently. I kind of like this picture. I don't know, he has my hairstyle. We usually only get older pictures of him where he has a scowl, so I kind of like this picture. It's a little bit more contemporary. But Shinran saw himself as the most foolish being of all and called himself Gutoku Shinran, meaning literally Shinran, the bald-headed fool. And it kind of meant stubble-headed. I'm a bald-headed fool, but I'm literally bald. Shinran was like halfway between a monk and a layperson. He was trapped kind of in no person's land. He was fully ordained, but he was ostracized and removed from a monastic tradition, but he wasn't fully lay either. So the stubble head thing is what happens to me. I actually took a shower and shaved today because I want to be super clean. But, this starts growing out, and it's like, what is he doing? Does he have hair or does he not have hair? So I wanted to share with you a couple clips from videos and a couple examples. This is an example of a false cause. So there may be some people who don't like to eat their vegetables, and you could make the argument that 65 million years ago, you could tell your parents this. 65 million years ago, a lot of dinosaurs ate vegetables, right? They were vegetarians, and they're all extinct now. And that's why I'm not going to eat vegetables. It wiped out the dinosaurs. So this fallacy is a one of time. Just because something happened before something else doesn't mean it caused it. And this happens a lot. It's very easy just because something happened before doesn't mean it's related to the effect in any way.
Vegetables are bad for you. After all, the dinosaurs ate plants, and we all know what happened to them. Let's pause for a moment. That argument was ridiculous, and that's because it contained a logical fallacy. A logical fallacy is any kind of error in reasoning that renders an argument invalid. They can involve distorting or manipulating facts, drawing false conclusions, or distracting you from the actual issue at hand. In theory, it seems like they'd be pretty easy to spot, but this isn't always the case.
So the dinosaurs died because of a meteor, not vegetables. So this thing about distracting you, one of those is called a red herring. That's one type of logical fallacy. And I wanted to mention there's like 30, 40, 50 different types of logical fallacies, and they get very confusing and they overlap. But a red herring is where you attempt to distract from the main issue by bringing in some irrelevant information. So this one, the mom says to the little boy, "It's time to do your homework." And he says, "We had pizza for lunch." So he wants to get right. Have you had that happen? The little boy wants to talk about anything but homework. So he's trying to talk about nutrition or lunch or what was on the pizza. So this is called a red herring. And then sometimes fallacies are done on purpose. People will actually use fallacies to win a debate. That's one of the reasons why I don't like watching debates that much, is because that's what's going on. They're trying to win an argument, but not really, it's not a valid argument. They're just trying to score points.
Sometimes logical fallacies are used intentionally to try and win a debate. In these cases, they're often presented by the speaker with a certain level of confidence, and in doing so, they're more persuasive. If they sound like they know what they're talking about, we're more likely to believe them, even if their stance doesn't make complete logical sense.
So I wanted to show you one. One of the fallacies is called the slippery slope. And it's claiming that a single event will inevitably give rise to a whole chain of future events that ends up in a disaster. So I was going to use a cookie as my example, that like just because you eat one cookie doesn't necessarily get me eat the whole bag. But then I realized, no, that's true. I can't stand up here and use that with you because I can't eat just one chocolate chip cookie. So I either eat 4 or none. So I changed it to a spork. This is a spork. So this is one of the examples on the internet. You could say, to reduce the amount of plastic that we use at OCBC, we should start using sporks. Because then you just need one utensil. You don't need a spoon and a fork. You could just use a single spork, and we cut our plastic waste by half. But the slippery slope goes like this. So you want to outlaw all forks and plastic spoons. And all the ones that are already made are just going to go straight into the landfill, and nobody's going to use them. And all the factories and all the people that make plastic forks and spoons are going to lose their jobs. And then the big one is, how are we going to eat spaghetti, right? You got to take a fork and turn it in the spoon. So you're saying that Olive Garden should just go out of business, and we'll never eat spaghetti again. So, and it happens very slowly and gradually, but you go from wanting to introduce sporks to shutting down Italian restaurant economy across the United States. So you just can't let somebody take you on that journey. You have to stay on point. Oh, so now we're going to look at the false cause, and that time doesn't imply cause.
One common logical fallacy is the false cause. This is when someone incorrectly identifies the cause of something. In my argument, I stated that the dinosaurs became extinct because they ate vegetables. Now, while these two separate things did happen, a diet of vegetables was not the cause of their extinction. Maybe you've heard false cause more commonly represented by the phrase, correlation does not equal causation, meaning that just because two things occurred around the same time, it doesn't mean that one caused the other.
So, one example I guess they're saying here is, just because it got cloudy and then you dropped your ice cream cone, that didn't cause you to drop your ice cream cone. They just happened at the same time. So causation fallacy all too often claims to find a connection based on mere time. The occurrence of one event after the other, or occurrence of events, is not proof that one caused the other. So I tried to think of a good example for this. One of the examples they used on the internet was, it seems like whenever you get your car washed, then it rains, right? It always seems like that. You say, I just got my car washed and now it's raining. And I guess if it's within 24 hours, you can go back and get another car wash. But, getting your car washed is not causing rainstorms. They're just happening in order. And it may feel like that, right? It may feel like that to you, but it's not true. And then I kind of like this one. Another example is that ice cream sales are correlated with the level of porch pirates taking your Amazon packages. And you would think maybe that like a sunny day causes ice cream to melt, and it also causes porch pirates. But it doesn't cause it, but it's correlated. In the summer, when it's warmer, people are usually away from home. It's easier to be a porch pirate, and we eat more ice cream when it's hot. But eating ice cream and porch pirates are not related. They're correlated. It has to do with the summer months, but they don't cause one another. So this is kind of the wrap up of what this video was talking about, of how do you prove a conclusion.
By applying critical thinking, you'll be able to detect logical fallacies in the world around you and prevent yourself from using them as well.
So this is the one I think that's the hardest one to do, and I think it's the one that I relate to Shinran the most. It's called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is the tendency of people to favor information that confirms or strengthens their beliefs or values. And it's very difficult to dislodge once affirmed. So I tried to think of an example. There's a lot of e-bikes out now. And in Huntington Beach, there's a ton of electric bikes. And one night, 2 e-bike riders got in front of my car, and they were doing wheelies and tricks and spinning around in the car lane. And I wasn't sure what to do. Like, are they motor vehicles or are they bicycles? So what happens is once we have an experience like that, we tend to only notice e-bike riders that are going too fast, not stopping at lights, because it kind of affirms that experience or that opinion I had that night with the e-bikes in front of me. But you tend to not notice the good e-bike drivers, right? The good ones you don't notice, but the bad ones you're like, yeah, they're all crazy, right? They don't follow the rules. They're not following the motor vehicle code like I am. And so this is one of the most insidious delusions I think there is we look at the world and we filter out things that kind of don't agree with our worldview or our opinions, and because we're holding them as facts. And so this is one thing I try hard to work on, is to not filter my experiences based on things that make me right and make me confirm that I'm right. I mean, feeling right is great, right? That's a great feeling. So we tend to do that. We do that with drivers. We tend to do that with lots of people in our lives. And I think this also leads to, being judgmental about other cultures and things, right? You only notice the negative. You don't ever acknowledge or notice the positive. So I wanted to talk about this idea in Buddhism. There's a term called the Echantika, and there was a big debate in Buddhism. The Echantika was supposed to be somebody who was forever unable to ever realize awakening in their life. Like that possibility, that path was completely cut off from them. And, another side of the Buddhist house said, well, if everybody has Buddha nature, then awakening has to be available for all people. And there was kind of a debate on that. And then, just in the nick of time, the Nirvana Sutra was translated in China, and it actually said that awakening was available to all people. And that being an Echantika is not permanent, it's not fixed. And so I found these definitions in the Nirvana Sutra, translated by Dr. Mark Blum that I mentioned earlier. And what makes somebody difficult to reach is they tend to not see what has been done. They're not aware of what they've done. They also don't come forward with the harmful things that they themselves have done. And this was a big one. Their bad behavior does not distress them. So they're just unaware and oblivious. They don't realize they have a problem, right? And so if you don't realize you have a problem, it's very difficult to take action to make change in your life. It said, Enchantikas do not admit to themselves the host of bad things they have done. They are ignorant, even though they often do things that are harmful. While doing them, they initially have no sense of fear. This is why they are unable to attain nirvana. So it's really an issue of self-awareness that we need to work on in our lives. So we read this today that kind of has this feel to it. For evil sentient beings of wrong views and arrogance, the Nembutsu that embodies Amita's primal vow is hard to accept in Shinjin. This most difficult of difficulties, nothing surpasses this. So you have to become self-aware, but then it works, right? There needs to be some self-awareness that you have a problem or an issue to be able to start to have a mind that is open and supple and more pliable. And I mentioned at a conference the other day, when I read books now or I find quotations, I don't really worry too much about whether I agree with the book. You know, like a lot of people will read a book and said, well, I quit reading it. I didn't agree with the author. But I don't do that anymore. I like to read books that challenge me and make me think. And it's usually the books that don't agree with me that I get the most out of because I never looked at it that way. And you could still disagree with the author, but you could still learn something from it. Or maybe it helps you mature your views in response to the book. Another quote, when aboard the ship of great compassionate vow, let pure Shinjin be the favorable wind, and in the dark night of ignorance, let the jewel of virtue be a great torch. Those whose minds are dark and whose understanding is deficient, endeavor in this way with reverence. Those whose evils are heavy and whose karmic obstructions are many, deeply revere this Shinjin. So, this is when you begin to become self-aware. And that's when the Pure Land tradition can be effective. So I wanted to share with you the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. And a better translation is the Four Truths of the Noble. So I can't remember which scholar it was now, but he said it's not the truths that are noble, right? These are not sacred truths. These are the truths of people who live their life with a sense of nobility, right? So nobility in Buddhism is not from birth. It's not your social standing. It's not your financial standing. It's not your ethnicity, your career. It's not your zip code. It's living a life of self-awareness and being aware of what you do and having insight. So the first noble truth is I always have an uneasy feeling. There's just a sense that something's off. And maybe this is the Echantika thinking like, I don't have a lot of friends, or people don't seem to talk to me a lot, or I wonder why I'm not invited to more things. And, instead of saying that people are unfriendly, you might think, well, maybe that joke didn't land. Maybe I shouldn't have told that joke. They didn't walk away until after I told that joke. So you can start to become aware. And there's no malice, but you're just not aware. You're just not aware. And that's evil in Buddhism. And so the second noble truth is you have a seeing problem, right? You're just not seeing things clearly. And then the cure is insight. And then the practice or the process that leads to insight is to walk the path every day. And I wrote this here on the side. Today we use a lot of analogies about the internet and Wi-Fi and texting and Googling. And in the Buddha's time, the hot new technology was medicine, medical science. So this is kind of set up in a medical metaphor. So the first noble truth is a symptom. You have an uneasy sense. The diagnosis is you have a seeing problem. The prognosis is good. There's a cure. And the prescription is everyday practice. And I've mentioned before, this happened with Emily. When she was little, she had an ear infection, and we had a PA at Emergicare, and he was new, and I could hear him mumble to himself, she has a fever, there's some moisture in her ear, she has an ear infection, I'm gonna prescribe amoxicillin, and she'll be well in about a week. And I got all excited, and I wanted to shake him and hug him. I'm going, oh my God, that's the Four Noble Truths. You just did the Four Noble Truths. So this is really what they do. This is really what they do. So I think a lot of Americans think that, at least I did, that I'm going to get insight. Like I'm going to get super wisdom, and I'm going to see everything clearly, and I'm not going to have confirmation bias anymore, and I'm going to be like, become a Buddha. But I think Shinron's saying, as my son says, kiss the brakes, just kiss the brakes. I don't think I've changed the way I think. I think I still see things the way I see them, but I realize now they're just my opinions, and they're not facts. And I have insight into the fallacies that I constantly come up with. And so I don't think we become like incredibly wise. I just think we're aware of how our brain works. And when I see things and they bother me, it's like a me thing, right? A lot of it's me, it's my issue. When you go to therapy, they'll tell you that if you have a trigger, it's not the outside world's problem. It's not your husband's problem that you're being triggered. They say, you have the trigger. It's your trigger. You have to work on how you respond. And so being aware of your triggers or being aware of your buttons is cathartic, it is very effective in removing this uneasy feeling. So I think in our tradition, rather than becoming a Buddha of deep wisdom and insight, we just become very self-aware. And in doing that, we become less intractable, we become more open to new ideas, we become one with those around us, we learn things from everyone, and we become more grateful and humble. And there are, like I said, 40 or 50 fallacies, and it's very confusing, and they overlap. And I had a professor at IBS named Dr. Richard Payne, and he constantly found fallacies in scholarly papers. And it almost seemed like every statement somebody made was a fallacy. So it's very difficult not to do these. But if you're aware you're doing them, then they don't really have the same power over you or the same hold. And so just becoming aware kind of cures the problem, right? It's an awareness problem. It's not a wisdom problem. And I think this is how we practice as everyday people in the Pure Land tradition. So just be aware that your common sense is very common. It's very pedestrian. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just the way you see the world. And try to be open to new experiences. Try to let things challenge your assumptions and beliefs. And I think that really will help lead to a life where that uneasy feeling begins to fade away, and you begin to feel more connected with those around you. And you don't see the world as kind of black and white alternatives. You start to see the middle a lot more. I've told people that the answer to all questions in Buddhism is and both, right? It's never neither or. And so if you live a life of and, it makes a huge difference in the way you experience your life. So if you could please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Naman Butsu, Naman Butsu.